Dr. Death entered the vernacular, the issue of medical negligence has sent a chill through patients around Australia, especially in Queensland. 6 doctors there are now under police investigation, with a report by a senior lawyer referring them for possible offences including criminal negligence and grievous bodily harm. Today, another 14 medical practitioners have been put on notice. Reporter Peter McCutcheon has been speaking to some of the patients whose lives have been ruined along the way.
Well, Peter, I haven't really had any quality of life as I knew it before this operation. I have trouble doing housework. I've missed out on my grandchildren's milestones. I missed out on a funeral of my mother-in-law, and I just can't do the things that I was normally able to do before I had this operation that went horribly wrong.
Heather Fuller went in for relatively simple surgery and barely came out alive.
I've never seen Heather other than vivacious and bubbly and cracking jokes, as she said, but this was terrible. We thought we were going to lose her on several times.
The 62-year-old grandmother was battling with type 2 diabetes and 2 years ago decided to have a lap band to help her lose weight. But there were complications, and Heather Fuller was rushed to intensive care the day after her surgeon performed a second operation.
I only remember after waking up from ICU, and I couldn't walk, I couldn't talk, I couldn't even write a letter. And I also had hallucinations, which were terrible.
The Fuller family says the original surgeon perforated Heather's stomach twice, stitched up one hole, describing it as an ulcer, and failed to notice the second hole.
So that whole week that she was in ICU, she was just stewing in her stomach juices, and that's how she's become septic and really ill.
Heather Fuller spent several weeks in a coma and 8 weeks in intensive care, damaging her trachea and changing her life forever. The mistakes were picked up by another doctor during a third round of surgery.
We think that maybe had they been given the right information as to what had happened, then she would never have ended up being in the coma for as long as she did, and with this permanent trachea, and things would have been completely different.
The doctor who performed the first 2 operations, Dr. Gresham Clapham, is currently being investigated by the Medical Board of Australia and stopped practising after regulators imposed severe conditions. He's told 7:30,
"I am humbled and sorry for any harm caused to Mrs. Fuller. It was unintentional and unforeseen. It has completely shattered my life."
7:30 understands Dr. Clapham is involved in at least one other civil case of malpractice, and his history of medical competence going back before Heather Fuller's operation is being closely scrutinised. He's one of 6 doctors recently referred to police.
We're talking about a minimum or a minimum number of doctors here who simply believe they're competent when they're not.
Jo Barber is a former medical board investigator who last year blew the whistle on her own organisation, alleging what she saw as cover-ups and failures to properly investigate.
There's peer pressure by doctors on other doctors not to complain, so not to be known as a dog, so to speak. The same with nurses.
Her allegations led to the Queensland government setting up a legal review of more than 3,000 medical board files. A senior counsel found, although there was no evidence at this stage to suggest a prima facie case of a criminal offence committed by the 6 doctors, he recommended police investigate possible criminal negligence or grievous bodily harm.
Hi, Dr. Broadbent, how are you?
I'm very well, Karen.
One of the 6 doctors under scrutiny is former Gold Coast practitioner Russell Broadbent, who featured on the 7:30 report 6 years ago for the high mortality rate in his radical anti-obesity surgery, as well as 2 GPs, a cosmetic surgeon and a neurosurgeon.
But we've been very serious about this, dead set serious. But the journey that we've been on is, I think, going to lead us to a fair conclusion.
But securing criminal convictions against doctors are notoriously difficult. as highlighted by the recent unsuccessful attempt to prosecute former Bundaberg surgeon Dr. Jayant Patel on a manslaughter charge.
Dr. Patel's very happy with the result.
It would be difficult to get a prosecution, but that's not a reason to shy away from it.
Sarah Atkinson is a medical negligence lawyer who has been involved in civil cases against 2 of the 6 doctors referred to police. She welcomes moves to more closely scrutinise medical boards and test some of their decisions.
If we just sit back and say, doctors are gods, then I think that's problematic in itself. I think that's part of the culture.
There's all sorts of cultural issues going on within the boards and within the medical profession that are preventing complaints from being made. And when they are made, and they have to go through this rigorous system to get to the board, then they're not acted on.
The Queensland Health Minister is foreshadowing legislative changes to Queensland's medical complaints system.
Well, I think that there does need to be obviously more transparency, and I think we need to have a far more seamless process for people to go through. And it would be interesting to know what would happen in other states of Australia if they actually took the same steps and lifted the lid internally on the way that their complaints against clinicians are dealt with in their jurisdictions as well.
The Fuller family believe a more transparent and rigorous system of medical complaints may have alerted them to problems with their choice of surgeon. But as Heather Fuller adapts to a new life, her family shy away from talk of criminal prosecution.
I guess Heather and the family, we're not after revenge or anything like that. We just don't want this to happen to anybody else. We don't want any other person to go through the pain and suffering that Heather's been through, or the family. So if he isn't allowed to operate, that is a good thing. And that's pretty much all we want to see.
Peter McCutcheon reporting.